All right, Howard Doss, we are still here at CrimeCon 2022.
Man, this has been fun.
This has been a good time here in Vegas. Again, a hell of a lot bigger than I expected first time at one of these type of deals. Everybody has been fantastic. We've crossed paths with a lot of, huge fans of the whole crime genre and the podcasters and television and so forth.
They know more about crime than you do.
Yeah, that's actually, there's probably quite a few that they think they do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of home detectives that are doing their little thing trying to solve some cases. But, hey, we'll take all the help we can.
We got a great guest today, man.
We do have a great guest today. We have got the one and only Chris Hansen here with us.
Hey, guys.
Very, very honored to have you here with us.
Thank you. Appreciate
Been in TV a hell of a long time. We'll kind of jump through that story, and
Sure.
obviously well known for, Here, have a seat and To Catch a Predator and all this type of stuff, and talk about what you're doing nowadays.
Absolutely.
But Chris, here on Coptales and Coptales, we do have a nice drink every episode.
Yeah,
So
as you should.
as we should. So we're still sipping on our bottle for Nashville Barrel Company, our Cocktails and Cocktails
Nice.
bottle. And actually, Mike Hines, one of the owners of one of the owners of Nashville Barrel Company, is literally on a flight in right now to come hang out with us here.
Yeah, he gave us this
that's
one.
tonight. So. Cheers to you being on here with us. I
Thank
know
you.
you're not
Cheers for
having a
having me.
cocktail, but thank
not
you.
just yet, but you guys go ahead.
Well, you're our second journalist, and by far our most famous journalist that we've had.
Only in
on
my
here.
own mind.
And the tallest one. Listen, I'm going to say this.
you're-
Well, when we saw you today walking around, it's something I've heard a million times. Excuse me. So on live PD, I have to sit down because I
Right.
am quite a bit taller than Dan Abrams.
He stands.
And so just, for the framing of the shot,
Sure.
using some TV terms there, I guess, I sit. And when I saw you walk in there, I was like, man, he's a hell of a lot taller than I expected.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, through doing the shows and podcasts or whatever, chit-chatted with quite a few people in TV, and a lot of them are a little bit shorter. So it's nice to see an over 6 footer with me.
Yeah, well, you got to do that. It helps me to control the situation with the predators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tower a little bit.
Look down upon them, as you should. Okay, so how'd you get started in journalism?
Well, I grew up about 1.5 miles from where Jimmy Hoffa was kidnapped in suburban Detroit, and I was fascinated by the story. I was about 14 years old at the time, and I used to ride my bike up there. And crime tape and FBI agents and local police and local reporters and network reporters, and I sort of got bit by the bug. So a few years later, when I went off to college at Michigan State, I went down to the college radio station, signed up, and I was a reporter.
So what was your first case?
Well, I did a lot of rip and reads, in college, and then I was trying to get into the newspaper, the campus newspaper. They had nothing open in the news department, so I was actually a sports writer for a semester. And then I got into commercial radio at WJAM radio.
You have that
Michigan.
voice?
Yeah. Oh, well, I tried.
You said WJAM?
JIM.
JIM.
Yeah.
All right.
It was-
WJM.
Well,
It was TV and radio, and JIM was the son of the founder, Jim Gross, and they had built this facility. It was TV and radio, but they had a built-in swimming pool in the middle of it,
As you should.
as you should, which was great as a young radio reporter with the keys late at night after being at Max Bar. But that story aside, the owner figured, well, if TV never works out, we can turn this into a Holiday Inn. So he had the pool built there. It was the most amazing story I've ever heard. And they no longer own the station. But, yeah, it was radio and TV. It was great. Great place to work.
Is Detroit still home for you now?
Detroit, we keep a home in suburban Detroit, and we've got a place in New York City. So we're back and forth all the
So
time.
suburban like Novi, 8 Mile?
West Bloomfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you?
I was going to ask about the 8 Mile. It's Eminem fan. I mean, what
Yeah.
are we talking here?
It's,
8 Mile
yeah,
goes
I
away.
like it. I like that.
You
Eminem, yeah.
you a Pistons guy?
I am. I more follow basketball in the New York area recently, but I keep track of my Pistons. Yeah, I used to when I was a reporter in Detroit. Those guys, the bad boys, were all around my age, and so they were running around at the same time. Some of the baseball players, Kurt Gibson, and so we'd
Oh,
see
yeah.
them. My posse would run into their posse, and it was a fun time to be in Detroit. And in Detroit, you don't have Hollywood necessarily. You don't have Broadway. So the TV news guys and the sports guys are the celebrities. And so you get a little bit of clock that way. And it was a fun crew to sort of be running around with a little bit back in the day.
Yeah, a little bit different era of basketball.
I can only
back
think
then.
about Anchorman when you say that, you know, the rivalry of the posses, you know?
Yeah, that's
The
right.
second best.
Yeah, exactly. Well, obviously, everybody, you know, you're well known for the Catcher Predator. I mean, I know been in television, done a lot of other different projects. And Howard and I were kind of talking before you walked in here, and I'm not going to lie, did very little to no research ahead of time. Just thought we'd, you know, chit chat
Live in
here.
the moment. Live in the moment.
I know you've had to say this stuff a million times.
That's all right.
But just how did that project come about as far as from you know, the TV side of getting involved with the organization that was working
I had
it?
learned of the group Perverted Justice, which at the time was an online watchdog group of volunteers who would pose as children in chat rooms. And if an adult approached them, agreed to meet them, to have sex, they would post that person's identity, the best they had it, on their website. And so you could go to pervertedjustice.com and say, this bad guy, this predator, tried to have sex with a child, or somebody posing as a child. And then law enforcement took a bit of an interest in it and prosecuted some of the cases, and I got wind of it, and I pitched it to the folks at NBC at Dateline, not as a series or anything close to what it became, but merely as a segment on Dateline. And I figured if we could combine our ability to wire a house with hidden cameras and microphones, and combine that with Perverted Justice's ability to pose as children online, it might be compelling. And so we did it. And we didn't have law enforcement involved in the first investigation. I had security, my guy Ronnie Knight, a retired NYPD lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a house in Bethpage, Long Island. And I was driving out there, and I started to think, you know, what if nobody shows up? What if I've just wasted tens of thousands of dollars of the network's money? And with that, my producer calls and said, where the hell are you? There are two guys supposed to be here in 45 minutes. And by the end of that 2.5-day investigation, we had 17 guys surface, including a New York City firefighter.
Huh.
And I was blown away. The people at the network were blown away. The material was among the most compelling I had ever captured. And, you know, I had a great team working with me on this. It wasn't a solo affair, obviously. In the United States, I mean, I had been overseas and done stuff in Cambodia where we had infiltrated brothels with Americans and Western Europeans going there to abuse children.
Mm-hmm.
We had done stuff in India with child slave labor and in other places around the world, but never in the United States have we ever captured anything so compelling as this. We essentially infiltrated the commission of a felony and watched me interview the guy and try to figure out what the hell they were doing. And so this material was kind of around NBC for, you know, probably 9 months almost before it aired. And we had it cut into, you know, a 3-part, you know, show for Dateline. And some of the executives were worried, how do we promote it? What do we do? And I finally said, look, this is how you promote it. There's a guy, and I used slightly more delicate language than this, or actually more indelicate language than this to get my point across. But there's a guy at your back door who wants to have sex with your daughter tonight. We're going to show you how to prevent that. And it aired, and predictably it got an amazing response. So we did it again in Washington, outside Washington, D.C. And then the third time we thought, well, we need to collaborate with law enforcement because it's the socially responsible thing to do for justice, 1. 2, it's amazingly unsatisfying for the viewer to see these guys leave the Sting House, whistling Dixie and twirling an umbrella.
Yep.
These guys got to face justice. Now, some of these cases, before we collaborated with law enforcement, were prosecuted successfully. The rabbi, many others. But we had to change. And what we've done since then is continually evolve to be socially responsible for the sake of justice and safety of the crew, to do the investigations the way we do them today. And I just did one a month ago in Michigan. That'll be part of the new series.
Man, so you know, you've kind of talked about the NYFD guy. You mentioned a rabbi. I know there was a teacher that was caught up in it, and you know, the first thing you said was 17 guys. Is that what it was? And just 2 stings later, or 2, you know, operations later, whatever the term is. I think I saw something you guys caught like 50 guys.
51 in Riverside, California.
Yeah,
it was stunning.
And how many days did that go on?
3 days.
3 days, 51 guys. And that's just guys that showed up, let alone how many they're communicating with or other ones that are out there. And this is still kind of in the, what was it, 2004, 2005?
2006.
2006.
2006 was Riverside.
I mean, we're talking 16 years later
Yep.
where everybody is on the internet, on the
Think
phone,
about
things like
this.
that now.
In those days, when we started, we merely had decoys in chat rooms on AOL and Yahoo.
Right.
Well, today, we go do an investigation like we did recently in Michigan, and I've got to really brush up on
New
my
technology,
ability
yeah.
to know which social media platforms are out there. And it's not just, the ones you'd suspect. We had a case recently, and we're going to delve into this in our new crime streaming network, True Blue. A 12-year-old was on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And a 26-year-old or 28-year-old in Florida was able to groom her and gain her confidence, and then flew up from Florida, got her to climb out of her parents' bedroom window, meet her in a church parking lot, took her to a hotel where he sexually assaulted her. She shows up at a hospital with the predictable injuries of having sex with a 12-year-old girl. The Sheriff's Department, Genesee County Sheriff's Department, figures all this out because they get the tapes, the surveillance tapes from the hotel, the rental car, and everything else, and they find the guy, arrest him, and then they figure out that he's done this multiple other times in different states.
Yeah. Well, and that's and sorry, Howard. I mean, Howard.
It's just an offshoot of something we found during our predator sting.
Right.
The same law enforcement agency happened to have that going on at around the same time.
Yeah, and that's something Howard and I have talked about. I mean, and we've actually even talked about it on a previous episode. He's got a daughter. He's got 2 daughters. I've got a daughter. They're all grown. I mean, they're in their early 20s now, mid-20s. But it's those vulnerable kids like that are on, just as you said, social media platforms now, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and it's stuff that's communicated. And it's not old school internet anymore.
No.
Let me get your emails or the chat rooms.
Think about during the pandemic.
Yeah, everybody's at home.
The numbers reported by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children are absolutely stunning.
Yep.
The number of inappropriate contacts reported, and there's mandatory reporting from Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and all that, go right to the NCMEC. And the amount of inappropriate contacts between adult and children and child porn transmission between adult and children shot up like 900% during the pandemic.
Which terrifies me as a father,
What terrifies me is, my kids are grown.
Sure.
But I worry about, the next generation.
Well, the thing is we talk about the next generation.
Yeah.
We were talked about by the previous generation as
Right.
the next generation
Absolutely.
and how bad
But now
what we were
think
doing.
about this. Predator has spanned 3 generations.
Right.
One of my favorite tweets ever was a guy talking about, who Chris Hansen is. And he said, I was sitting in a room with my 76-year-old dad. I'm 40 and my kid's, 15. And I asked him, he said, oh, the dad says, oh, the guy who catches creeps. And the 15-year-old said, oh, he's the guy on the internet all the time on YouTube with the predators.
Right.
That's what we've hit now. And I think at the end of the day, besides, the value that this material has and the enterprise reporting and all the things that we do in terms of taking people inside the commission of a felony, I think that my takeaway, or what I try to do, is get in the minds of these guys, try to understand it better, and hear the voice of a victim and create this dialogue and awareness that maybe didn't exist before. And that's really what this is all about. We want to take the viewer, and you guys know this from this podcast and from your time in TV with Dan and all that. You want to take the viewer on a journey of discovery.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing about, I think what the Predator franchise did was open my eyes, at least, to how we do enterprise reporting. It's not traditional investigative reporting where you're getting reams of documents and all that.
It's in the moment.
You're sticking your neck out in the moment. And one of the things I have so much fun with on my podcast, Predators I've Caught, is I get to go back into these cases and really immerse myself in them and then tell the story of what this guy did, who he was, what he had accomplished afterwards, and where he is today. And it resonates with people because we don't have time in the moment. You guys know that.
Sure.
Sure.
I'm watching his hands. Yeah, I've got the transcripts. I may know what he does for a living, but I may not. The cop a month ago in Michigan, I didn't know he was a cop.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about it before we jumped on air, and I was just going to ask you, your podcast, Predators I've Caught, obviously there's a few that stick out, you know, despite the, gosh, how many do you know you were involved with? Or the show was involved with?
Close to 500.
Close to 500. So out of 500, it's the same thing for me as a cop for as long as I was. Arrested thousands and, I mean, literally thousands of people, but there are a handful of either arrests, a handful of bad guys that I've dealt with just like, that dude was fucking different.
Yeah.
You know, and there's guys like that stick out. So out of the 500 or this one you recently, I'm actually really interested in the one just recently. If you want to talk about it,
Absolutely.
I know. Yeah.
Todd Baracco, police officer in a small town in mid-Michigan, Vassar. He walks in, and the way we do the investigations now is if he walks in and I make the approach first and I can get him to talk to me, which most of the time is what happens, that's the way I do it. When I'm finished with my talking to him, and I'm involved in terms of watching the chats and dealing with the law enforcement decoys who go online. And so I have a sense of what's happening here, who he is, what he wants.
And sorry to cut you off there. Much like Catch a Predator was, what you're doing now, do you guys still have a camera crew that's in there? So he knows.
It's the same.
I mean, obviously everybody knows you
first.
Yeah.
And shockingly, after 18 years of doing it, some guys don't even know it's me now.
Gotcha.
Right? So
well, it's because you're tall.
Exactly.
They're not expecting a tall Chris Hansen to walk in.
Yeah. And his hair got gray.
Yeah, what? Crazy.
It used to be gray. But he comes in, pulls in his new pickup truck, and he marches in. And I've talked to the male on-site decoy. So there's a guy there who's, like a police cadet who looks younger. And the line that he's going to use is, come on in, and I left my vape upstairs.
Something a kid would say.
Exactly.
Something a kid would say.
Exactly. So he comes in. Well, it was the first one of that day, right? And so the decoy was a little, I don't know, gave off maybe a bit of a nervous vibe. And so Baracco, being a cop, gets sketchy and bolts. So I come around the corner. I said, hey, I'm going to need to talk to you. And he's gone. Cops grab him, bring him back in. The scene is secured. Now I get a shot to interview him. Now, if he talks to me, great. If he doesn't, well, these gentlemen over here would like to speak to you, and I step to the side. So he's getting shitty with me. I mean, he's just indignant, and he's turning around and turning those cameras off and ordering me what to do. I said, look, you're not running the show here. And there's cameras over here, and cameras over here, and now the big cameras come out. And I'm at him, and he says, you don't know, I didn't do anything wrong. I said, I've got the chat right here, and I read the chat back. And then I take the tube of lubricant, which he brought with him, and I put it around his face and said, what's this? Off he goes. He leaves, and I say to the crew, I said, that's going to be a cop, a school administrator, somebody in a position of authority, as I mentioned earlier. And they toss his car, 3 loaded guns, his creds, and handcuffs. And now people are coming out of the woodwork to me about stuff he's done before, why he was fired from a previous agency. He was also a school administrator in charge of kids. He was accused. I had the town supervisor of a small town, say that he went to her home and harassed her because she fired him. And when she drove through the town where he was a cop until he was busted, he pulled her over and wrote her 30 over, which would be reckless driving, and just to jam her up. And so you got this is like one of those movies about the rogue, bad, evil cop.
You're right.
And this thing will become a segment of its own at some point.
Just a nightmare for society, basically.
Yeah,
someone in a position of authority. That's a predator.
I found out that he had interviewed, at a larger department in Oakland County Sheriff's Department, which is run by, sheriff who went to the same high school I went to. I grew up in that area, so, it's hard to pick a major law enforcement agency where I don't know people.
Of course.
And they flagged him. No, he's had too many different jobs here. This is
There's a reason.
So let's back this up a little bit. What was the cadet you had there? How old was he posing as?
He was posing as 14, 15, 14 about to turn 15.
And how did he approach you? What was it on Instagram?
This
Facebook?
was on a social media, platform. I think this might have been Kick or maybe Grindr or something like that. And you're supposed to be 18 to go on, but kids go on it and they say, "Look, I'm only this," and they make it very clear. And then there's a discussion in the chat about, "Are your parents home? And are you sure this is okay? And do you like bottom or top? And
the
are you
details of
showered?
it.
I smell good. Do you shave? The usual stuff." And so it was clear in the chat. And as you know, as a lawman, in most states, the crime is committed with the solicitation online.
Absolutely.
Showing up is, icing on the cake.
Right.
That's the TV part of it.
That's when you get him in custody.
Generally, in most states, the solicitation is in the chat logs. And that's the case.
So let's finish this up. What was this guy charged with?
He was charged with 2 or 3 counts related to solicitation of a minor for sex using the internet for lewd and lascivious behavior, and he immediately, the sheriff's department that arrested him, got him held on bail. Some of these guys get out on their own recognizance very quickly, and he was held overnight. He finally made bond, and he was suspended that day. The sheriff in Genesee County, Chris Swanson, is very proactive. His GHOST team, the Genesee Human Oppression Strike Team, is well into the hundreds in terms of guys they've arrested. And we crossed paths. He was one of the sheriffs during the Black Lives Matter protests in and around Flint, Michigan, who diffused it without violence. He got attention worldwide because he was on a vehicle and took his helmet off and walked with the crowd.
Walked out there. I do remember that.
Situation, and he was on everywhere. So I had him on my YouTube show, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen, to talk about that. And at the time I was gearing up to do more Predator stuff, so he was one of the law enforcement officials who I'm now working with on these new Predator operations.
Chris, when you're talking about, you guys used a male right there on that deal, and going even back to Catch a Predator, did you guys just kind of play with using both male and females, that were decoys at that age group?
It's easier to do the online decoy work because you have a picture that you use or have pictures that you use, and it can be anybody. It could be a 50-year-old man or woman doing the
typing.
Right,
Sure.
right.
But you need somebody there. Now, in the early investigations, Dell Harvey of Perverted Justice would pose as a boy or a girl. There wouldn't be that face-to-face interaction. She would, say, "Hey, I'm upstairs. Hey, I stubbed my toe. Hey, I'm getting the laundry. Hey, I'm getting the sweet tea."
Come on in.
The excuse was, come on in, and I'd pop in pretty quickly. Later, we were able to find on-site decoys who were of age but looked younger, who were perhaps theater students at a nearby college. In one case, the daughter of the home's owner, the home we rented for the sting. And they got really good at it.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you capture the moment of conversation between the predator and this live girl or boy, and you see this grooming process go down in real time, and it's chilling.
Oh, very much so.
Sometimes they freak, and then I have to come in and take care of business. But we've had some of these things run for a while, and some of these young people were very, very good at doing it. And it's a little dicey for us because, law enforcement's outside doing their thing, and they'd bail us out if they had to. We had security on the inside watching, but we had a couple of cases with a couple of weeks ago, we did the case of a guy who was a washout as a cop, but he had a gun with him. We had a guy in an investigation just 5 years ago. He was through the police academy waiting for a job, and he had a loaded gun in his car there for a 13-year-old girl. So, we make them go through procedure to make us as comfortable as possible as to the fact they're not bringing a gun in the house.
Sure.
Because we won't risk that. The police can arrest him outside, and we can deal with it later and tell the story. And that's why we try to get video of the police interrogation as well, because that's obviously very telling.
Very telling, yeah. Well, and just, back when doing policing earlier in my career, we had a couple areas within Tulsa that were kind of known for same thing, lewd acts. It was primarily homosexual public acts that were happening, and so one of them was out by our zoo, and people from the public that are going out to the zoo, the park that's out there, would see these things happening. And so we were asked to go out there and work undercover in it. And just, again, going back to catching police officers, you caught a rabbi, a teacher, firemen, and between that 500, there's countless different jobs. But, we had caught guys that were on their work break, married. And and it's us as male police officers posing as other males, adults out there, not kids. But we legitimately had a guy that was and I didn't even know they still existed, but a Bible salesman one day, and had a car out there, and I swear had
that'll make the front page.
Cases of Bibles in his car that was out there, and we caught, like I said, the wide range of different guys. A guy who was he was a guy from Oklahoma City in his 70s that had come down there to see his grandson. And just showed up before he went to go visit his son, decided to come out there. And it is amazing the wide range of predators
we had
that
a
are
guy
out there. Well,
corrections officer, prison guard, who was on his way to Home Depot to get paint to paint the house, who popped in for a teenage girl with his wife and children at home.
He's not very good at home improvements.
No.
Okay, so I've got two questions.
Sure.
Females. You ever hear any female predators?
Not ever one who showed up. And the experts, the therapists tell us that that's because in the case of a female predator, you're more likely to see the teacher-student scenario. The female predator doesn't like the anonymity where the male predator gets off on it in some cases. So no, we've never seen it. I know it's happened. I wrote about it in my book, a case where it was going on, but generally speaking, and specifically in anything we've done, we've not seen it.
Well, and then my follow-up question to that is, you've caught the stupid predators, right? Obviously the ones that are driven by that basal emotion that I have to do this, I'm going to go through. I'm a little bit more worried about the people you don't catch. The people and how many people would you say that get spooked?
Well, I think, and this isn't a firm statistic, but I would venture to say that as many as have been caught don't show up for whatever reason. They suspect it's a sting. They have a change of heart. They get nervous. Or in some cases, they're just trying to get off by having this conversation and having their fantasy online.
That's what I was just going to say. I guarantee there's a bunch that are just back there getting themselves off, excited, masturbating. There's some,
and they have no intention of showing up.
They'll never do it.
Still, the solicitation
is there
of a minor has been committed. And so in many of these cases, there are follow-up investigations. We had a guy in the Fairfield, Connecticut investigation who drove by and flaked, and he went away. Well, they pulled him over, traffic stop, and in his pocket they found a hotel key, and it was near the Sting House in Fairfield. And they get to the hotel, and he had a whole setup there, video camera, tripod, computer. He was going to make a film with this underage girl.
And so the level of this, we can all agree any of this is fucking awful.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But then there's levels to this, like Dante's Inferno of shitbag, right? So you have the guys that are just like, oh my God, I get off by doing this. Then there's the guys that, like you said, that want to produce some sort of porn to put out. Right. And then there's who I think are the worst, the ones that like deal in human trafficking. End up taking these kids and they live the rest of their lives in horror or however long their life goes on. Those are, shit is terrifying. I think to every parent in the world that's terrifying.
And you hear these stories about human trafficking, and I can guarantee you that as we sit here in Las Vegas with the NFL draft going on down the street, and so many other things happening every weekend in Vegas, that there is human trafficking going on within baseball's throw of where we sit recording this podcast.
You should have said football's throw.
Football's throw, actually.
Yeah, that would have worked.
Good
better.
quarterback, probably. That's a better analogy, yeah. Because there's no baseball team here. Actually.
No baseball team here. They do have the Las Vegas Raiders, which just sounds so weird. So I'm a Bay Area guy originally, so it's like the Oakland Raiders to me is always the team. You know, or I mean, I wasn't a Raiders fan, but it's just Oakland. You know, the dirty, gritty Oakland Raiders, and then they're down in Los Angeles where nobody showed up to watch them, and now they're here in.
Well, their stadium in Oakland was like a prison.
Dude, it was where the Oakland A's also played baseball.
I know,
so
I
I
went
to a million A's ball games there as a kid. And
as a kid growing up in Detroit, the Tigers and the Lions played in the same
thing. Yeah. So it's like, you know, you got half a baseball field that's out there in a football game.
But
they're running on grass
now
and dirt.
beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Comerica Park's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
Have you been by this football stadium here?
No,
it is. Yeah, I've driven
stunning.
past it. It is.
It is stunning.
Speaking of stunning,
Yeah, let's talk about stunning.
we're going to talk about stunning. Any male that's taking care of their their grooming,
the business,
the women or men, if that's who their partner is, usually finds them stunning. This episode is brought to us by Manscaped.
Excellent.
And support for the Coptales and Cocktails podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. I know you're excited about that, Chris.
I am.
They are
the podcast. I understand sponsorship.
Absolutely, man. They're the actually bring it on or take it off, right? They're the best in men's below the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels.
You don't want any exposed razor.
No,
that's
absolutely not. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million, almost as many of you that you've caught on Catch a Predator, men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code STICKS, STICKS, at manscaped.com. Yeah, man, I actually got the little the 4.0 package. It comes with the this little lawnmower, as they call it, a weed whacker that ear, nose, and you know, your nostrils, your ears, so forth, get you all pretty. This day and age, I mean, this is not Ron Jeremy from the 70s.
No.
So you've got to take care of your business.
Anymore,
Not 1979. You got to clean it up.
It's also a little nerve-wracking when you go at yourself with a little bit of a razor. You know, you don't want to nick yourself.
No,
I mean, it's scary.
it is, man. You've got to, got to take care of it. If you keep a flat stomach, honestly, you trim it down. Hey. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah,
we'll just put it that way.
Pristine.
Got to be fit to win.
Yeah, there we go. Man.
Yeah, if you get that 4.0 package, though, you do. You get a bunch of stuff. They even throw in a free pair of boxers. So can't beat it.
That's a deal.
That's a deal.
Yeah. It's like a post-shave robe.
Yeah.
Yes. So, anyways, back to as we were talking, Chris.
DNA.
Got to get the business done. Yeah.
Man, so obviously your show was kind of groundbreaking television. Glad to know you're still doing it today. Listen, I'm sure you've seen it or at least heard about it, the South Park episode.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, I was never a South Park fan. I just never watched it.
Well,
I was never into
I'll tell
it.
you a story about that.
Please do, because I actually watched that episode recently and was
when that first aired,
pretty funny.
How old are your kids?
They're now 30 and 28.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have stepkids who are 22 and 20. And one's about to graduate from college and one's got one more year. But when the South Park episode came out, I was in San Francisco on an unrelated assignment, and one of my agents from William Morris texts me and says, South Park is doing you tonight. It's pretty funny. Now, I had 3 hours before I could see it because of the time change. And 20 minutes later, he sends another text. It's turned a little dark.
It's South Park, man.
And so I watched it, and I thought it was funny. But my older boys at the time were in high school, and they went to a high school on the East Coast with kids whose dads do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, sure.
They run networks, they build ships and sailing yachts, they're titans of Wall Street. And so having a dad on television wasn't necessarily a big deal. But when South Park,
when you hit South Park,
when Chris Hansen was parodied on South Park, that was a big deal. Suddenly I was cool. And I look, they make fun, but they do it in an intelligent, biting way.
Absolutely.
And I had absolutely no issue with it whatsoever. I mean, look, if you want to make fun of me, great. If it brings attention to a very important topic and continues the dialogue and promotes my work, even better. So I have very thick skin. And in a business where you expose a lot of bad guys, in an area where there is the ability to create misinformation campaigns and attack you back, you better have thick skin in this business.
Sure. I mean, let's talk about that episode, though. That episode was based on the fact that you know the details a little bit better, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, there was an assistant district attorney, if I'm correct,
right,
that was down in Texas. Absolutely. That basically put himself in a position that he was.
He had 2 different chats with 2 different decoys online, and he never showed up at the Sting House. This is in Murphy, Texas. He was an assistant district attorney in a neighboring county. And in fact, just 2 weeks ago, we did that episode on the podcast, which is, we got a lot of news scoop on that, by the way.
Would love to hear it.
Bill Conrad Jr. And the cops go out to arrest him the next day.
As they would anybody else.
As they would anybody else. Now, they were doing this as a courtesy as opposed to make a big show out of it and arrest him at the DA's office the next day.
Right.
I had no control over that. I would have preferred, television-wise, they go into the DA's office the next day because that's a big show.
Oh, that's big on TV,
but
absolutely.
Whatever. It wasn't my call. So we're in the street. They go in, break down the door. He doesn't answer. And they get to the hallway, and he's got a pistol pointing to his head. Guys, I'm not going to hurt you. And he shoots himself in the head. He later dies. There's a helicopter in the backyard. It's horrible. You never want to see anybody do that under any circumstances. And it's jarring, and it's dark, and it's sad for a lot of reasons. But why did he do it? You know, ultimately his sister sued NBC for millions and millions of dollars. The case was settled.
Right.
For a lot of different reasons. A settlement comes out of insurance policy. You go to trial, which I'm confident we would have won. It comes out of the news budget. It ties up months and months of my time. I'm sad for the sister. I truly am. But the reason, more likely than him worried about Dateline being involved, was that ultimately when they did the forensic examination of his laptop, they found multiple images of child porn. And in a recent episode of my podcast, Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen, we learned from one of the police officers who then was working for Murphy that also what was found on that computer was evidence that helped convict Conrad's boss, the DA of that county, for financial mismanagement of the office and theft of money. He ended up doing federal time. He's the one who got on TV and criticized everybody involved in the investigation. And, you know, and he then goes to federal prison for crimes, some of which were exposed on Conrad's computer along with child porn. Who's the bad guy there?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, you know, even, and kind of just to relate that even back to Live PD, you know, some of the stuff. It's like there's people that are doing things wrong. They get caught, but they want to blame it on the show. Right. You know, it's a lack of accountability for who the person. And listen, that's a problem in society in general now.
It is, but you know, there's an overcorrection sometimes.
Absolutely.
And you know, I don't know the nuance of the details of the Live PD situation, but I do know that it's a great show, and I have a lot of respect for Dan Abrams and the people involved in it, and go way back with him to our days at NBC. But I also know that people can gin up something. You know, you go after a bad guy predator, and we've done this with stories on the YouTube channel where we've gone after people who come back at you. And then you take them out of the digital world, and suddenly you're doing a documentary like the one we did on this guy Onision that we did on Discovery Plus, and you know, you get them back into your ring, and then you know, you take care of business.
Right.
But it can be unpleasant until you get used to dealing with these people, and you know, these people can gin up 1,000 bots on Twitter and attack you.
Yep.
And say whatever the hell they want about you.
Well, and that's going back to we talking about thick skin.
Yeah.
You know, being a type A personality, I'm a bigger athletic guy, a cop, so you kind of have that mentality. Yes, Howard, what?
Go ahead. Keep talking.
Bring it. Come on. You know, and it's just, you know, part of the job. I don't want to say, you know, you think you're this badass going around, but I mean, you know.
You got to be fit. I can't be out there doing this job with my belly hanging out over my slacks or not being.
Right.
But
and to me, being physically fit is also being mentally aware and sharp and being able to do the job.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Exactly. Well, when Live PD first started, I didn't have Twitter. Television. Right. I mean, obviously, there's big stories going on right now about Elon getting a hold of Twitter and stuff like that. But I mean, in the TV world, that is huge. Twitter is huge for how things, you know, orchestrate. Well, Twitter was a big part of Live PD, where people would, you know, send messages in and so forth, or comment during a live show. and there were people that were anti-police that would do so as well.
Well, the timing of it also was, you know, when there were, obviously it came after the George Floyd case, horrible policing.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, terrible. Nobody's going to stand up for that. And some other incidents that took place that did not reflect well
on the police impression.
I mean,
sure.
You know, there's a guy, you had a raid in a case where somebody was charged with creating a danger to the other people by firing shots, but yet not charged in the death of a woman resulting from those same shots. I mean, come on.
That's about the Breonna Taylor stuff.
Taylor
That's
thing.
there's another
It's,
podcast
you know,
episode.
You got to be careful as
Yeah.
a law enforcement, and I see these things all the time, and not all the time, but the isolated examples that I see that are so offensive, and there's another one that's being investigated now in Grand Rapids. You know, you don't have to shoot the guy in the back of the head. What are you thinking?
Right.
I mean, yeah, he's a bad guy. He had a bad registration. That one, what kicked it all off for me was that case in outside of North Charleston, South Carolina. The guy's running away.
Was that the guy in the fleet? Listen, that guy, that's a murder.
He was going a half a mile an hour.
Yeah, the guy.
All you had to do was go get a stick and trip him.
You're talking about the guy that was running.
Yeah,
He shoots
the
him from
cop shot him in
behind.
the back.
Well, that guy,
God, it was horrible.
that was a murder. I mean, that was a flat-out murder. He ran up and even threw his taser, if I remember correctly, down next to the guy to say he had taken my taser and all that. And I think he was convicted in federal court, if I remember correctly.
There was just, but you know, those are the things that you hate to see used to paint law enforcement all around the country, right?
Absolutely.
And I go back, and I get it, and I've been criticized for working too closely with law enforcement for the Predator case, and there have been other cases where I've embedded with law enforcement and drug investigations and things, and I've got access that other reporters didn't get, and so I'll take that criticism. Open and honest criticism is how we improve journalism and our television projects. I get that.
Transparency. But
But go ahead.
who else are you going to work with on that?
Well, I'm just
What are
saying
you going to work
that's
with the
appropriate.
PTA?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the people that need to enforce
That's
this.
my point.
Right.
And that's why, you know, this True Blue digital crime network is going to be so important because that's where the Predator stuff is going to go. That's where I'm working on 5 or 6 different documentaries. I mean,
Right.
you guys ever watch True Detective?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
fantastic.
I've got the real
I'm
version
Woody
of that
Harrelson.
going on right now in Louisiana. Right now. I mean, the real thing.
The real deal.
And we have the ability because we've learned how to produce television like this more efficiently, a better scale of economics, and faster, where I can be in a lot of different places in a short period of time and create this content that you won't see anywhere else. And it's branded, you know, Chris Hansen, True
Sure.
Blue stuff, and Takedown and all the rest of it. And so it's very exciting. It's the same thing that we did with Predator, right? And much like what you guys did with Live PD. We did something in a different way. We infiltrated the commission of a felony. We took people on a journey of discovery. They hear things they wouldn't normally hear. They see things they wouldn't normally hear. And this is the next step in the evolution of that process in terms of distributing that content.
And even beyond that,
people who want it.
it's knowledge sharing. I mean, you're sharing.
Yes.
People aren't exposed to this. They don't know that this is a potential weakness that they have in their.
And I'm all for citizen journalists using social media platforms to create awareness.
Yeah, but let's
I am.
do it well.
But let's do it well, and let's not, not everybody should be doing this.
No,
right?
exactly.
And I'm against, government, supervision of the First Amendment. You can't have it. That's why we have a First Amendment.
Absolutely.
Everybody can do whatever they want, but the consumer needs to be smart
Right.
about whether they're believing some conspiracy theory on YouTube or whether it's a Chris Hansen branded, show on True Blue, or whether it's one of Dan Abrams' shows on your guys' networks. I mean, you have to go with people who you know and respect, and it's a big media world out there, and it's changing. But I'm very happy with this new platform because I think it's going to revolutionize the way we do business.
Well, I mean, from talking to you, the amount of integrity you have towards this particular cause, right? Human
Right.
trafficking.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, that's
But I also think, look, you do something for 40 years, you start to get the hang of it, right?
sure.
Sure.
Should.
Venture out.
And my 20 years with NBC and in local news before that allowed me to create the platform to do the stuff that I'm doing now, where I get to be an executive producer. I get to have ownership of the content. I get to make decisions that I didn't get to make before.
Yeah, you get to steer
and
the
I
horse.
think that I've earned that in this business with all the work and contacts that I've made. You know, I've seen people here at CrimeCon. I ran into a fellow who was, ran the Congressional Affairs Office for the FBI for 25 years maybe, and he was also the liaison with the press. And just a wonderful, wonderful guy who's got a world of knowledge, who's now in private industry. I will do something with him.
Absolutely, as you should, yeah.
I mean, and he's here with another former FBI agent who's written a book. And I, it was very difficult to get the FBI to let you do something enterprising with them because they're so worried about the Justice Department. And I understand.
They are. There's so much red tape trying to do
But
something with a federal
this
agency.
Individual pushed and pushed and pushed and got us a few steps further than where we were. You know, it's easier to work with the sheriff's department because the sheriff is elected. The sheriff
makes a decision.
Is going to do what he believes is right for the community and for justice. Smaller police departments are usually easier to do these kind of investigations than NYPD or Chicago PD. I mean, look, I have a lot of friends on NYPD. John Miller comes from my world. Loves the Predator show, but we'll never get that through NYPD. Now, we can do it in Bethpage, Long Island, and find people who come there from NYPD. They're not wired that way to do this. I mean, they're very good with the media. You know, I got my NYPD press pass in my bag. I carry it wherever I go. But it's not the kind of thing they're going to do. And so you have to be smart about what area you pick to get the kind of access you need.
Well, Chris, man, honestly, this has flown by.
Yeah.
Our time is, you're here in Vegas. You've got money to go lose and booze to consume. And
I've got
so
one
forth.
question before he leaves.
Yeah.
Have you ever caught one of these predators, sat down with them, and you kind of go cold because you look in their eyes? Because you have an incredible EQ. I mean, you're obviously able to read people very well.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen somebody and you're like, oh, fuck.
Just a straight up.
Yeah, this is a psychopath. There's nothing here.
Yeah, I have, and it's somebody typically we've had, a number of these guys who has done this before, who has been the bad guy in the Big Brothers organization, and there's a trail, did some prison time, and here he is walking into our sting, and the guy is just a stone cold. He might as well have the word predator tattooed across his forehead.
Sure.
And I'll jack him around 100 ways till Tuesday, and he won't break. And normally, I mean, I can usually break about 60% of them. Really just get him to lay it all out there. And some are in purgatory and someplace in between, and some are just like the cop we caught a month ago, just, F you, I'm not cooperating.
Not happening.
And so it's a combination. And all those together, make for a pretty damn compelling piece of content.
Correct.
Well, keep doing it.
All right, man.
Keep doing it. Hey, how can everybody find you? Get the plug. Give us the YouTube, the podcast one more time.
YouTube is Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. Podcast is Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen. It's on all the platforms. WatchTrueBlue.com for updates. That's the website. And official Chris Hansen on Instagram, Twitter at Chris Hansen, and there's 4 or 5 Facebook accounts you can find.
What about your OnlyFans?
What is your OnlyFans?
Yeah, well, it's very expensive. It's very expensive.
Well,
all right, we'll hit Law&Crime up for a budget for that.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
All right.
TCAP. Mr. TCAP to you.
Cheers to you,
Chris,
sir.
thanks,
All right,
bud.
boys. Thanks for having me.
Friggin' fantastic.